And we have a recording in progress. Anybody that doesn't wish to be recorded, please let us know now. And a little bit of housekeeping, of course, as ever. If you're not speaking, can you make sure you're muted so that we don't get much feedback on the call? A little bit before we start on the speakers, if I may, just to report back from Natural Cambridgeshire. We held our AGM earlier last week. That was the normal kind of administrative process as you'd expect to see, and just reporting back to you that we re-elected a number of members, being Tim Brightmeyer, Matthew Bradbury and Richard Astle, and they were elected for a further term. Hannah Phillips from the RSPB stood down because of impending family changes, so she stepped down for the board. The board also approved the annual report for 2023, 22 to 23, together with the State of Nature report. Both of those, I think, have been kind of pre-circulated to all of you. So if you have any questions to ask at either of those documents, of course, very happy to receive them. The State of Nature report in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, of course, recording all the good work having been done by our various partners together with Natural Cambridgeshire. So if anyone has got any questions regarding to the annual report or the AGM more generally, or the State of Nature report, as I say, very pleased to take those questions now, or we'll proceed with business. So we'll crack on. First speaker this morning is Gabriella Yeomans from the County Council, updating us on the local nature recovery in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Gabriella, and I think you've got some slides to show.
I do, thank you. Let me just share my screen. Can you see these?
Got them, thank you very much.
Wonderful. You can, sorry, just to confirm, you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see.
Brilliant. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me along today to talk about our local nature recovery strategy in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I'm going to give you a quick kind of whistle-stop tour of what is an LNRS. So I'm sure most of you already know by now how we're progressing in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and then to just touch ever so briefly on our stakeholder engagement side of things as well. So I won't spend too much time on this page, but just a quick overview for maybe the one or two of you that aren't quite sure what an LNRS is. Local nature recovery strategies are a system of spatial strategies for nature and environmental improvements, and are required by law under the Environment Act of 2021. The purpose is to agree priorities for nature recovery, map where the most valuable existing areas for nature are, and then also specific proposals for creating or improving environmental habitat, nature, and also those wider environmental goals. Local nature recovery strategies are part of the wider nature recovery network, which is happening across the country, and this has been delivered through mapping and data, collaboration, and integration of policies and funding streams to try and maximise and incentivise the delivery of nature recovery. So what we're planning to do here in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, again, I'm sure most of you have kind of already seen this slide. It's been recycled a bit, but it's just kind of to help you understand where we're hoping to focus our development. So we wish for it to be a cross-county collaboration. We want to build upon and draw upon existing assets and expertise. There's been a lot of great work already across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, with many people doing different types of nature-based solution projects and work and programs. So we really want to build upon them and make sure that they're incorporated into this LNRS, and we're not starting from scratch. To do that, we need to make sure that we have a good stakeholder engagement plan and it's well resourced and the output is accessible to everyone. We wish to create a document that everyone can get behind, and it shares the ambition of doubling nature for nature. And also, again, just incorporating existing work such as the Cambridge Nature Network or the LNP strategic areas. We've developed a governance framework by utilising existing groups, partnerships and forums. Again, strong feedback we had was do not reinvent the wheel. Everyone's stretched for time and capacity. So we wish to tap into existing groups and come and speak to those groups about the LNRS and make sure that they're taken along on this journey. We need to link into other environmental incentives such as B&G, ELMS, etc. It also has to have a community engagement level, make sure that nature recovery is happening at a local level. And lastly, we want to expand upon existing natural capital opportunities, understanding what are those priorities and those potential measures, and linking them into the wider environmental benefits as well, such as health and well-being, flood risk and climate change. So progress so far. So since January of 2023, we've pretty much in what I've been calling in this interim phase, where we've been establishing our project management principles, getting the programme all set up, making sure that we have a governance structure in place. We've got timelines that everyone is signed up to and a framework to deliver the LNRS. We've had early on engagement with stakeholders. We've had one-to-one meetings with our supporting authorities, who are the city and district councils in the area, as well as hosting a collaboration workshop with a wide range of partners and stakeholders in May of 2023. We've also undertaken a procurement process to award contracts to these following consultants. So Land Use Consulting, who have been awarded the authorship contract and will be writing the final strategy. But we've brought them in at this stage, so they're involved in the entire process. So when they're writing up the outputs and the final strategy, then they know what they're talking about. And then also Natural Capital Solutions, who will be providing GIS support. So this is a spatial strategy. We will be developing maps to go alongside it. So Natural Capital Solutions will be working on that element. And then lastly, as I've just mentioned, we've been engaging with our supporting authorities. They play quite a critical role, and we've been quite keen to work with them quite closely to make sure that they've been taken along on this journey as well. So next steps and timelines that you should be aware of. From October of 2023, we've commenced again, now what I'm calling our research phase, and have initiated our stakeholder engagement and communication work stream, which is being led by Natural Cambridgeshire. And a stakeholder engagement plan is being drafted, and we're hoping to commence our real key stakeholder engagement in the new year. We've also initiated our data and evidence work stream. So this work stream is what Natural Capital Solutions are working on primarily. And we've just completed a data request to all of our partners and stakeholders. And that data request is collecting data to update our baseline habitat mapping, which will kind of form a baseline for developing the local habitat maps and the maps that will be created to support the statement of biodiversity priorities. We've also want to understand land use strategies and policies. So again, it's building on that existing work, and it is not reinventing the wheel. And it's making sure that these existing strategies and policies are incorporated into the LNRS. And then also understanding those wider environmental benefits. As I previously mentioned, it's quite a key and steer from DEFRA to make sure that we incorporate those wider environmental benefits. So those last two work streams, LUC have been undertaking some desk-based research, and will be presenting their findings in the new year as well. So the research phase will be has commenced in October of 2023. However, it'll be running till hopefully June of 2024, where we will then have our first draft of the LNRS. And then we will commence our development phase from July 2024 onwards. We'll go out for public consultation. We are required to go out for public consultation. And then once we've completed our public consultation, we will be refining and testing those priority areas for nature recovery and the potential measures that go alongside them into a more manageable list, and then creating the final draft of the LNRS, which we're hoping to have signed off, completed, uploaded onto our website by March 2025. So as part of our LNS, we want to develop an inclusive engagement and communication plan. And as I just previously mentioned, Natural Cambridgeshire are leading on this work stream. However, I just wanted to touch bases on it now as well and see how the Natural Cambridgeshire Partnership Forum can get involved in developing the local nature recovery strategy for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So we'll soon be releasing a survey as to kind of go out and ask what do you think nature recovery is, what do you want to get out of the LNRS, and kind of that broad approach to make sure that everyone is involved and everyone has the opportunity to feed into this. If you have any community engagement events or any events or kind of working groups or other forums that you would think we would benefit from us coming along, then please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to come along and give a presentation. We've also going to be releasing a quarterly newsletter, and hopefully the first newsletter will be going out before Christmas. And you can sign up to this newsletter on our website. And I think it would be the best way of keeping up to date on how we are progressing with our LNRS. I've said that way too many times now. And yeah, it'll probably be the best way to make sure you're getting regular updates and how we're progressing on that. That's on our journey. We'll be coming back to the Natural Cambridgeshire Partnership Forum in a couple of months, and we can provide more detailed outputs and hopefully start to draw in your expertise and get your input into this process as well. Just lastly, wanted to say that we really want this to be inclusive. We really want to make sure everyone is taken on this journey. Everyone has the opportunity to feed into this process and have your voices heard. So we do plan on working from the bottom upwards and meeting with all that existing work that has already taken place across the county and building upon that and adding value where possible. So if you have any ideas, any information that you think would be critical for us to know, then I've got my email address in the next slide, and please do just drop me an email. Happy to have a conversation, happy to take anything, any data, any plans, any strategies, or any other further information you think would be worth sharing with us. Please do just let me know. That's my whistle-stop tour of an update for the LNRS, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gabriella, and thank you for all the work you've been doing. And taking over as chair of Natural Cambridgeshire has been really encouraging to see so much progress being made and such a progressive approach. So, and also one that's seeking views from colleagues to input. I see also that Pamela's added the website address to respond to Elizabeth's query. Any further questions for Gabriella?
I've got a question for
I think Lara, I think I see in the top, you're in the top left of my screen, Lara, so I can see you, and you've got your hand up. So Lara's first question.
Gabriella, first of all, I'm really happy that you're working on this project. I'm very impressed by your work with Future Parks, so I'm excited about this. Having looked at the project plan towards the end, do we have any further government guidance on what an inspection process might look like, or what happens once we submit what we think our document looks like? And then also, one of the major elements in the legislation around this is that we have to prioritize our habitats. So do we know how, that's going to be the most difficult part from my point of view. How do we prioritize them across all Cambridgeshire? So have we thought about how we're going to attack that thorny issue?
Yes, so with regards to your first question, unfortunately, no, we haven't received any further guidance on that kind of sign-off process apart from what's already been stated in the regs and guidance. With regards to prioritisation, we have just had some guidance released by DEFRA on what that process looks like. And the steering group had a meeting on the 29th of November where I presented a kind of process and it's now with our steering group to review and feedback on. So hopefully in the new year, I'll be able to share that process and more details on that process with the wider stakeholders. But I would highly recommend you look at the guidance that was released by DEFRA. And if you don't have that guidance, I can send that on to you as well. But we're hoping to follow that.
You're on mute, Martin.
Go on, that's the first time this month I've got that wrong. So please forgive me. Any further questions for Gabriella? And thank you also for Deborah for putting in Gabriella's email within the chat. I'm not seeing any further questions, no hands waving at me. So I think, Pamela, you have a question.
I just wanted to sort of further answer Laura's question just briefly. One of the main points that DEFRA has said to us about prioritisation is that not to just get a load of experts in a room, make a decision and then say to the general public, ta-da, please endorse this, but actually for it to be a truly inclusive process. So that's really what we're looking towards. You know, we're looking towards input from everyone, as Gabriella said, and that is kind of in the prioritisation process as well, that actually there will be, you know, public voices all the way along, including at the very beginning.
Thank you very much, Pamela. In which case, unless there are any further questions, I think the LNRS is obviously going to be head of our agenda for the next year and a half, and we'll be coming back to it many times in this forum and elsewhere. It seems to be a constant feature of my life presently, and I'm almost learned most of the acronyms now as well, which I will get there eventually. Next speaker up is Richard, and I can see Richard's there, ready to pounce and to share with us stories about Prickles the Hedgehog, which I'm intrigued to hear more about. So Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, I'll equally try and share my screen here, so just bear with me a second. Okay, is that working? If someone could just shout yes.
That's good.
Thank you, excellent. Okay, so yes, my presentation is about Prickles the Hedgehog. But just before I do, a brief introduction to me and a bit of context to the project. So I'm the service lead at East Cambridgeshire District Council for planning policy, climate change, nature and nature recovery. I have a very small team covering all of that. Just 2.5 other people work for me in that little team. And in terms of nature recovery, I have a very small budget of possibly around £10,000 to spend on projects to do with nature recovery. A little bit wider context, as a council, we have very limited land holdings. And as a district, we have some pockets of really important, internationally important habitats. But let's be honest, the vast majority of East Cambridgeshire is massively nature depleted. So that's the context within what this project's all about. So what should I do when I suddenly had this £10,000 given to me each June? So option one for nature, well, I could take some easy options. I could just splash it out on a project on our own land, perhaps, spend the money, do a nice little project and move on. Even easier, I could give it to someone else's project to do. Say Wickham Fen, great project down there. Could easily give them £10,000 and I'm sure they'd spend it wisely on something. Or I could take a harder option and start to involve communities, public engagement, or try and find out what the public actually wants us to do. And I did go for the hard option. So public engagement, why did I go for that one? Well, first up, I'm not an expert on nature. I'm not an ecologist. I'm not qualified in that field at all. I'm actually a qualified planning policy officer. That's my background. And to be honest, East Cambridgeshire District Council is not an expert on nature. So I came to the conclusion that let the experts do the expert projects, you know, whether that's National Trust, RSPB or whoever, they're very good at doing big expert projects. Let them get on with those projects. Whereas local government, East Cambridgeshire District Council, you know, all district councils, we do uniquely engage with all residents, every single resident, whether you like it or not. If you live in a district, you engage with that district council, whether we collect your bins, we set your council tax, we plan your district, we license the services that you use in that district, whatever it might be, we do engage with every single resident in a district, which is quite unique as an organisation. Not many other organisations or businesses would operate that way. So my plan was, well, let's take advantage of that engagement. We engage anyway, whether people want us to engage with you or not, we do it anyway. So let's take advantage of that for the basis of nature recovery. A couple of bugbears before I move on to my actual project, and forgive me, I'm generalising here, but I'm just being honest, is that I do have the impression that ecologists or other nature lovers talk to ecologists and other nature lovers, but we struggle to engage with that wider population, i.e., the non-nature lovers, or those who really don't know what to do about nature. When we do talk to them or try to talk to them, we just baffle them with words that we just lose them. Ecosystem decline or ecosystem services or regenerative farming. What on earth do they mean? And then we even use words that I can't even pronounce, never mind explain to the public what they mean. So we're just going to lose them with it. So in my view, the general widespread understanding of the biodiversity crisis across the wider population is little beyond what David Attenborough presents to us on BBC. And in my view, that's all about a failure of communication by those interested in nature and wanting to do something about nature. Because if we don't explain things simply to people, people will just simply get disengaged, they'll get confused, and if we don't grab their attention, we'll very quickly lose them. Or even worse, if we tell them what to do, people just don't want to listen. They don't want to be forced to do something. We need to engage with them properly. But having said all that, I think it's fair to say people do care. A recent poll I found from about a year ago, a YouGov poll, said that 81% of people in the UK do think the wildlife is under threat. And they are actually, I was quite surprised with this one, 48% said they were willing to take action themselves, but 42% equally said they don't feel empowered to do so. So with all that context, how do we get the attention of the public? How do we empower them? And in my view, we need to find those ways to engage with the public at their level. We need to get the public to identify something that they care about and identify something that, they can actually do. That whatever that something is, we can then use it as a possible stepping stone to perhaps greater action by them as well.
Going externally to how do we show that, let's say, sustainability in the broadest sense, kind of UN goals?
Thank you. And if we fail of all of that, trying to engage them in all those ways, then if all else fails, let's use whatever tools or things we've got, and whether it's fluffy toys or bribe children with sweets. If that works, and these were the examples I used, some jelly beans and hair, soft toys, then let's use it. Yes, Prickles, this talk is about you as a hedgehog. I'm getting to hedgehog soon, but just first back to the basic concept of the project that I've been running and set up is what I wanted to do first was get the public to tell us as a district council, which animal do you care about? Why do that? Because I think if they tell us, if the public tell us which animal, then they're interested in that animal. And if you let them choose, then they're more likely to feel responsible for it because they actually chose it in the first place. So it becomes, or it's more likely to become, a shared council public project, not just a council project forced on people. So what did I do? I set up a public vote in 5 separate events in 4 separate towns across East Cambridgeshire. There's a very simple vote here. I gave them some choices, just easy, common animals that are in East Cambridgeshire that do need our help, but let the public choose. Which ones do you want us to help most? But a really important part of this was it wasn't just a vote here, drop your voting card off, disappear. Well, it was then a way of engaging with those public, that very initial engagement, to let them talk about those animals. What was their experiences? What do you know about those animals? And a way for us to talk back to them in a simple language as possible about, what is happening in East Cambridgeshire for nature, not just those animals, but just generally. It was a way of starting conversation. And we made it as friendly as possible. If you vote here, you can win the cuddly animal of your choice. if your name's picked out of the hat at the end. We hid some fluffy hairs around stalls on a marketplace, for example. And if you go and find all those fluffy hairs and come back and tell us where they are, you win a packet of jelly beans. And then on that packet of jelly beans, we actually put a little QR code that, you know, if people want to explore a bit further, it takes you to our environment actions that we're doing for the year. Again, it's just a little ways into people to try and engage with people and try and raise their awareness, raise their interest, let them explore in the way that they want to explore. And right from the start, you know, as I said, I'm not an ecologist, and I knew this project wasn't necessarily the most ecologically sound project. I know there are some species far more in desperate need than the ones we gave the choices for. But, you know, let's be honest, if we offered them some rare species, like, I don't know, a spined loach or a black-tailed godwit or a ruff or whatever it might be, we put those choices down. They might be rare, they might be in need of our help, but quite frankly, people wouldn't care. They wouldn't understand what those animals are. They probably wouldn't even know they were talking about animals. They wouldn't know what they were voting on. And we would, again, just very quickly lose them. So we had to keep it simple with animals that they know, recognize, easily understand, and have a chance of actually seeing and doing something about it. So we held those votes, as I said. We collected all the votes in, and the winner was, unsurprisingly, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it, it was the hedgehog. That was voted by the majority of people. And by Adara here was the lucky one whose name, excuse me, we picked out of the hat. So she was the lucky one that not only voted for hedgehogs in the first place, but she named the hedgehog Prickles as our mascot name now. So we've taken that one forward. If you were wondering, it was very surprisingly close across all 6 of the options we gave, which was really interesting. I'm afraid if you're a toad lover, that one came last, which was, again, interesting. Perhaps Wind in the Willows hasn't been on TV recently, whereas Sonic the Hedgehog still lives in the memory of quite a lot of children. I think they were still voting for hedgehogs, perhaps. Anyway, what happens next? I think a really important point to make is this is a long-term project. You know, we're going to be doing things directly, either on our own land or giving away freebies, whatever they might be. We're going to do indirect support. So we're going to support the local hedgehog rescue centres in East Cambridgeshire to give them more potential to help. We're going to do education through libraries or school packs or talks, etc. A bit of prescribing. So we're going to do a hedgehog recovery supplementary planning document and also a hedgehog recovery policy in our local plan to force developers to make hedgehog friendly developments. We'll do monitoring. So we're going to collect the data. We're going to celebrate the successes and comms, etc. Again, this is all very long term. It's not just a one winter hit project and then we move on. It's very much intended to be a long one, so that perhaps over time we'll have some kind of hogometer, perhaps, where we can start to count the numbers and hopefully see hedgehogs recovering here in East Cambridgeshire. But again, must emphasize the really important point of this project. It wasn't just hedgehogs per se. It's about a way into people and getting them interested in nature. So each time we talk about hedgehogs, we're also putting in other issues around habitat creation or nature loss issues or nature recovery and things like that. So it's just using hedgehogs as a way in. How's it going? As I said, it was this summer, late summer, we did all the voting, and since then we've had some really good local press coverage. We've had local community coverage in the independent websites. BBC picked it up. Apparently it was on the main front page of the BBC briefly, as well as now tucked away in the more regional pages. It's got Facebook coverage. I actually saw yesterday some LinkedIn coverage from it, you know, and it's reaching out beyond East Cambridgeshire, you know. So this Facebook page, for example, was from Hampshire. The local library in Ely is engaging with it, and I know Anna's coming on later to do a talk, so I'll skip over the library because I'm sure she'll perhaps mention it. Our local lobby group, East Cambs Can, are really behind it, so they've been helping promote it. The politicians are behind it. They were the ones that asked a couple of weeks ago for this hedgehog recovery policies for our local plan. So that impact has been really, really well received, really widespread now, which has been great to see. So coming to the end of my talk, really sorry if you wanted me to talk about hedgehogs. I'm not a hedgehog expert. I can't answer anything about hedgehogs, quite frankly. I love hedgehogs, but I don't know anything about them. But that's not the point of my talk. Because if somebody came on this talk talking to you all about hedgehogs, they'd just be preaching to the converted. You all love hedgehogs, I'm sure, and you all want to support them. But that's not the point of my talk. My point of my talk is we need to find ways of engaging with the the 650,000 residents in Cambridgeshire, not the 50 or 100 or 200 people that's either on this call now or will watch the playback of this call. We've got to engage with that 650,000 and find ways to engage with them. And so my suggestions are, as a forum, as people on this forum, we need to engage the best we can with everyone, not just with each other. We need to find ways of engaging with that wider population. We need to make it feel, this nature crisis we're in, we need to make it feel real to them. We need to make it a shared aspiration with them to do something about it. I mean, just encourage and show people, no matter how small, to do something. And that's one of the jobs that I think that this forum and the people on this forum really need to put as much effort in as possible. And this is a final slide for me. Is I do carbon literacy training talks as well, and I use this slide for carbon educating people about the carbon crisis we're in as well, but equally applies to the nature recovery. It's these 3 Ps that I refer to, and I've stolen it off the website, so I haven't made this up, but I do use it, is that we've got to make nature recovery personal to people. We've got to show them it actually affects you as a person. We don't do anything about nature. The nature decline will affect you as a person, whether it's not just for the beauty of it, but the way, the wider benefits that nature brings to society and economies. We need to make it personal. We also need to make it perceptible. We need to show people what's changing. We need to show them the evidence. We need to show them what's declining, where it's declining, but equally we need to show them where it's improving. And we need to make it practical. We need to show people, whether it's a very tiny little step or a very big step, but there are practical steps everyone can do, and we need to identify that. And if by doing all of those things, making it personal, perceptible and practical, we will get the public on board, I'm convinced. And evidence shows that with this Hedgehog example, that is exactly what is happening. So we are getting a much wider audience involved in this project than we would if it was a much more complicated project or obscure project for nature recovery. I'm not saying we shouldn't do all of those wider projects, but sometimes some of us, like myself, who's not an expert, needs to focus on where we can engage with the wider public. So that's it from me. I'm afraid Prickles is currently hibernating. There he goes. So he's unable to take any questions, but I'm happy to do so. And I will stop my slideshow. Thank you very much.
Richard, thank you very much. You're already stimulating some feedback on the chat, which is all very complimentary, and I kind of really thought-provoking from my point of view. As a new arrival to this world, it can feel quite alienating at times when you have very passionate, very expert people all talking to one another, and it feels a bit like an echo chamber. So a way out of the echo chamber is always going to be useful to consider. But questions more broadly from people on the call today? No questions coming up so far. I mean, just one for me, Richard. I see the point, absolutely see the point about involving the public in this, is how you then insert the expert voice in order to begin to add prioritization to all the things the public might want. Roger's got a question as well, but if you get my point, where, as I say, how the expertise fuses with the public enthusiasm.
But I think that's the point of what I'm getting at, is if we don't get the public on board to start with, they're not going to even want to ask the expert question. So I think, first of all, we've got to get the public interested in it. And then if they come by me and I can't answer the question because it's more technical, then at least I have the ability to point people in the right direction to other experts. I mean, we're lucky now, East Cambridgeshire just appointed our first ever ecologist, which is great. So that's another little stepping stone to more professional engagement with people should we need it. But then it's the likes of, I guess this is where the local nature recovery strategy can have a really important role as well, because that can start to feed off what I'm doing here, which is very, hands-on, fluffy community stuff, whereas the local nature recovery strategy can have the much bigger, broader projects as well.
Yeah, I've seen the nods come from Gabriella on that very point, and I've made the connection also about between the two presentations as being important. also note there's just if you haven't seen it already from Deborah, about the potential to link up with the County Council's Festival of Stories, so which obviously may be interesting. This is a story which can go in with that festival. Roger, you have a question? Roger Mitchell.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Richard. Absolutely fascinating. I was sort of following on a bit from what Martin said about the experts. I think experts, talk to each other in acronyms and things as with your planets, because it cuts the time. We know what we're talking about, but there's a lot of experts who can talk and simplify things. There's a huge following for the likes of Chris Packham and David Attenborough talking about species in far-flung parts of the world which we're never likely to see, and the public are fascinated. So my point really is, I think there should be a second phase in your work, Richard, and I'm happy to talk to you about this offline. The three species you mentioned, the ruff, the black-tailed godwit, and the spined loach, have fascinating life histories. And I think if the right person address those and explain to your public, you've got these wonderful, fascinating species on your doorstep, you would grab more of the public into these species, which are probably need more recovery than Prickles the hedgehog. So anyway, Richard, I'm prepared to talk to you more about this offline, but I do feel that there is another phase we have to go to, and we do have to address these species which really are in danger and really do need recovery.
Thank you, Roger. Question from Helen, or a comment?
It's more of a comment, really, to point to the Mandy, who's just put a comment in the chat, who's doing a PhD with the University of Derby, where they have a nature connectedness research group, and the principles of sort of nature connectedness, I think, which Richard has really talked to really well. Beyond Knowing Nature was quite a good paper that was written in 2017 that talks about the engagement, how to engage the public in nature, which is beyond the knowing, beyond the information. And all of this has a huge role to play, where we're trying to spread that message and make that enthusiasm contagious, if you like. This is a really important step, and it's a great presentation. Thanks, Richard. Really enjoyed it. And yes, we have to balance the sort of conservation, and within the world of conservation, there's the sort of knowledge action gap. We've all known what needs to be done for a very long time, and actually making that happen, which is the space we're in, and the business that Natural Cambridgeshire and everybody around here is in, is about how we then make that happen better, faster, quicker, in a way that's going to reverse biodiversity decline and so forth in Cambridgeshire. So I thought it was brilliant, and yes, we've all got loads to do, haven't we? So thanks, Richard.
Aye to that. Thank you very much, Helen. Any further questions before we move on? And I'm hoping that Nick Massey is ready to give us the picture. I've seen Nick nodding in the middle of my screen. It's always intriguing how they get to the middle of the outside of the screens on these things. But one day I'll be IT literate enough to know why that happens. But Nick, and once again, Richard, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was really interesting. And over to Nick from Huntingdonshire District Council, and I'm looking out over your parish just now to the fields behind.
Fantastic. Let me just try and share my screen and try and get it to present mode.
Yeah, we can see some screens, but we've got all of the additional things there, and it needs to be put in presentation mode.
It does, and just not working quite as well as I hoped. Bear with me 1 second. I stop sharing.
While Nick works on the admin, I'll give a little bit of background on this project. So I'm Councillor Laura Davenport-Ray, also of Huntingdonshire District Council. And over the last year and a half, we've received a fund from the Combined Authority to tackle biodiversity loss in Huntingdonshire. And so Nick is going to talk about the schemes that we've been working on in order to use those funds, how we've attempted to include our local communities in that work, not with a specific species like a hedgehog, but hopefully in other ways that will engage their interest as well. So Nick, let us know what we need to know about this project.
Yes, Lara.
Thank you.
Over to you, Nick.
Brilliant. Thanks, all. So, good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Nick Massey, and I am the project manager for the Biodiversity for All project at Huntingdonshire District Council. And in this presentation, I am going to give you a quick overview of why this project is still relevant, an overview of its ambitions, talk you through the progress so far, and then finish off with some lessons learned from what we've learned so far. So I understand that this slide will be very much preaching to the converted, but we are in an ecological crisis. And when we went through consultation for our climate change strategy, 83% of the people said that restoring nature and planting trees was a priority for them. So this very much resonates with everyone. And there's lots of evidence to show that UK nature is in decline, and that most of our UK habitats are in poor condition. But there's lots of evidence also to show that nature benefits people, climate change, there's lots of economic benefits to it too, so that the relevance for this project continues, and it's worth reminding ourselves of that each time. Now, our vision is very much to double nature throughout the district. And this is through faster, more direct action on our own land, utilising pilot projects with key stakeholders, landowners, to be able to enable them to deliver ecological works on their own sites, but also working with the community and making sure that this project is very much for all. So developing skills, communicating messages properly, and giving everyone the chance to be part of this project. We were fortunate enough to receive 1.3 million from the combined authority to be able to run this project. And at its core is a practical framework which can be summarized in an evidence-based approach. So everything that we want to do is grounded in evidence. And that's very much the process of baselining, using ecologists to map out what habitats are there, what the biodiversity scores are, and then give evidence-based advice to how we can improve that. At the start of the project, we used external partners to do this work, and we realized the value of it. And now we've brought that ecological expertise in-house, and we have 2 graduate ecologists that will be going forward and delivering this work for us. We are aiming to enable as many people to develop green skills in the community as possible. And our partners at Groundworks have been instrumental in helping us achieve this through running the Green Recovery project, which I'll talk on a bit later. But this is giving people the chance who are not in work, education or training to gain qualifications and help us achieve what we want to on our own sites. We are also developing knowledge and information sharing approaches through citizen science, through our own comms work. And it was really interesting to hear Richard in the previous slide as one of the key learnings that I'll touch on later is very much how we communicate and work with our general public to make this a success for all. The outcomes. This is key to Huntingdonshire to continue to be a great place to live and work. I touched on those numerous evidence to show the health and well-being benefits of access to nature. And we want to make sure that there is a legacy of informed and enabled communities. So this project isn't in vain and it continues throughout generations. We also are aware that our efforts are going to touch on other aspects of climate change through carbon sequestration and improvements in air quality, and also enabling people to help us map and record things through our citizen science approach. Now, our progress so far, I've tried to summarize this down into 4 key areas. So the first one is our work on our own strategic sites. So we had audits conducted by MKA Ecology on 13 of our own sites. These are our big open spaces, our public parks, where the baselining was completed and the expert recommendations were put in place. We're developing a plan for delivering biodiversity enhancement work on each of our sites in a schedule, a priority schedule, so we know exactly what we'll be doing when. We are providing opportunities to be part of the action. We are about to run our 4th green recovery project, which will be at Paxton Pits in January. And the advertisement for this has gone out, so people can apply to be part of it. And we're developing the work plan as we are. And again, this is based in evidence. So our ecologists have been out, they've identified what projects can benefit the environment there, and working in partnership with our rangers and also the Friends group there to make sure that everybody's on board with what we'll be doing. We want to enable others to enhance their sites. So we are running a pilot project at the moment with 9 parish and town councils, where they identify their own site. And again, we use that framework of the evidence base, getting the audit done, getting the recommendations, and supporting them with developing a grant bid to us for funds to deliver this work. So we've currently received 3 out of the 9 so far. And it was really important that we did this as a pilot round, because we're developing this unique approach of delivering the audit first and then supporting them to make the grant application. It became quite complicated. So it was good to work through and test out the process. And that is leading on to our full grant round, which I will touch on shortly. And then finally, making biodiversity truly for all. We have been partnering with iNaturalist to release a citizen science platform, which again, I have a slide on shortly. So apologies that this is a little bit small, but to help me talk through our decision-making process, and full disclaimer that this is still in development. It's going to Cabinet shortly for a full decision, but this just shows the framework, what we're proposing. So at the top there, we have the biodiversity audits, which baseline what habitats and what biodiversity units are there in these sites. And these take place in our priority sites, which can be broken down into our three key areas across the district. So we have the parks in St Neots, St Ives and Huntingdon. So the parks there list out how many biodiversity units have been identified in each site. And then it goes through to the consideration process, where we look at the Lawton Review, public access, what educational opportunities there, and so on and so forth. And that helps us come up with our short, medium and long-term priorities. So Spring Common, Priory Park and Hill Rise are our short-term priorities, which we will hope to deliver work on by the end of the project in March 2025. And you can see in each of these sites, we could potentially have huge increases to the level of biodiversity units available there. And a lot of these priority sites, the work has already been delivered through management plans, and this helps our park rangers and organisation really list out what they can do that's based and grounded in evidence. So Hinchinbrook Country Park is a prime example of this. The baseline audit showed that there are 811 units already there. And these are in habitats such as grassland, woodlands, scrubland, ponds and lakes, wetlands. And the audit identified areas where gains could be made. So I think the organisation is about 90% the way through adding all of this in and making the enhancements. And we've calculated that post all this work being completed, there'll be a 43% uplift in the biodiversity units there, taking it to 1,165. As I mentioned, our 4th green recovery project will be at Paxton Pits, and this will be supporting those not in work education or training to gain a qualification in the City and Guilds Trust Level 1 in horticulture. They will be delivering work such as hedge cutting, strimming in the orchard, and building bird and bat boxes. And one of the key jobs they'll have is cutting back some of the willow to allow one of the priority habitats there to thrive. So again, based in evidence and giving these people the opportunity to gain practical skills whilst helping us achieve what we want to on our own sites. There is the QR code there, so please do have a look at the website. If you think of anybody that might be of interest, who would be interested in this, please do encourage them to sign up. It's incredible to hear some of the stories of the people that take part and how life affirming and changing that this course can be. So we are very, very proud of the work that has happened so far. Previous sites have been Hinchinbrook Country Park, Spring Common, Regatta Meadow in St Neots, and we have a full schedule under development for the next couple of years as well. Now again, as I mentioned before, we've trialled a pilot grant round, and the second phase of this is to actually enable anyone who owns land and allows public access to it to apply for funds to make ecological enhancements to their land. And this is being done through a series of steps that we go through. First is an expression of interest, which one round has just closed in November, and the second round will be open in January. And this is for landowners and organisations to apply for a free ecological audit of their site. So once those ecological audits have been carried out, and again, the peak season will be spring to early summer for doing that, they will have then an evidence base to make further application to us for funds or to any other funders, and showing that they have that evidence base and those recommendations for what they would like to achieve. So from there, we will work with them to develop the grant bids, and it will go through to a decision panel, which Lara will be on. And then we're looking to award audits to around 15 sites, because that's the capacity our graduate colleges have. And then we're hoping for around about 10 sites for awarding funds to deliver the work. And we're hoping that this will all be completed by November next year. Now this, again, we have to balance the biodiversity and the for all aspect of it. So one, we have the evidence base of what's there, what we can improve ecologically. And the second is looking at the engagement with the local community, the benefits that they will receive from enhancing these areas, and who can be involved and what educational benefits we can get from this. Now, we initially worked with Anglo-Ruskin University to develop a point system that will help us with awarding grants, and our graduate ecologists have helped strengthen this. So when we get an application through, if they score 0 to 14 points, that will demonstrate that that site is probably going to get around about the £2,000 mark to help with the work that's required. If they receive 26 points and over, then they qualify for the maximum amount that we can give away, which will be around about £8,000. So a lot of thought has gone into how we can actually deliver this in an evidence-based way. Then we have our citizen science aspect, which we are working with iNaturalist on. So we have a QR code there in the corner. Again, if anybody wants a link or a website link, please do let me know and I can make sure that that happens. But this is a really user-friendly application that other local authorities use, and it's worldwide as well. And there are 1,500 active users already within the district, again, recording, and this uses AI and ecological expertise down the line to actually identify what species you're taking a picture of, and then that records it on the website. So it helps us with identifying invasive species, and also keeping track of what's already there. And our ecologists have found this really useful for when they're doing site visits and audits, but it gives the public the chance to do the same, be part of bio-blitzes and active work in the community. Now, this is a project that has many different aspects of it. So we have come across some challenges and some key learnings that fit into what others have been saying in previous presentations. And the first is that not everybody is on board with planting trees. Not everybody is on board with improving nature in certain areas. So it's really important to make sure that they are part of the journey, and it's really important to make sure that they're consulted and there's an element of co-design there. And that's influenced the way we are going forward with our priority sites. We are looking to do an element of engagement and co-design before we do any work on our key sites. And it's the same that we encourage for those who own their own sites applying for the grants. Make sure that they have permission and that the community are on board. To deliver an evidence-based approach, it is key that we have experts. So ecologists are worth their weight in gold, and we've seen the value of having them on board and the benefit to the project that they've had. So I can't stress highly enough how important they are to make sure that this work is a success. Time is of the essence. We want to make sure that we are planting at the right time. We want to make sure that we are surveying at the right time. So that means that we need to have a really well-structured program. Otherwise, we will be missing out on things and missing out on opportunities. And we always need to remember that we are planting and delivering work for generations to come. And nature doesn't always take straight away. But this is a long-term approach, and we really want to keep that in mind and make sure that there is a legacy to this project for generations to enjoy further on. Please do have a look at our website. It has the links there to the grant schemes, so applications can be made. It has information about the project, and it also touches on different things such as our alternative land management approaches. So please do have a look, and yeah, that's it from me.
Nick, thanks very much. That's really comprehensive presentation. I think also thanks to Lara for putting up some of the links for us as you've been going through. It's already stimulated a number of questions in the chat. A couple of them are, I think, on monitoring gains going forward and measuring those gains. One is over the long-term nature of this. And how I mean, I think it's a 30-year period. Have you put in place means by which will be monitored over those 30 years? And the second one is from Elizabeth about will the BD audits be considered in council planning decisions?
I think Laura might be able to answer some of those questions, but on the programme itself, we will be running until March 2025, and we have our ecologists until then, so they will be monitoring the progress up until that point. Further than that, we are hoping to develop plans for a legacy of this and making sure that we have the capacity to be able to monitor and evaluate in the long term what we are trying to achieve. But we are aware that nature doesn't always take, so we want to make sure that we are just giving it the best possible chance to start with. So yes, and citizen science will come into this as well, where the community gets a chance to actually monitor what habitats are in place, what species are inhabiting those habitats. So this can become part of a community approach.
Thank you. Lara first, then James, if we can, please.
Yes, so the question was about planning. And I think like most councils, we have a planning department, and then we have an open spaces countryside department. And in the moment, they're both thinking about biodiversity, rightly so. So one of our challenges over the next year is how to bring that thinking together more and interact more and share their data more. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but I think we're headed in that direction. But one of the other key strategies that we hope to accomplish with this project is to create something that can be replicated. So if there are other councils in Cambridgeshire or farther abroad that want to do something similar, that we're recording how we're doing it as we're going, so that another council can pick it up as a style of working with the public, and we hope that they will.
Thank you, Laura. James.
Hi, morning. Well, that leads nicely on to what I was going to ask really. So I work for a smaller ENGO who has country parks and stuff as well. You know, the approach of using biodiversity audits to kind of give you a measure of, you know, where you're at and how you could get there. For us, the challenge would be, you know, the costs of doing the initial audits and then potentially having to go back and do the audits over time to measure where we've got really. So I guess that's a kind of a challenge for those who aren't blessed with public sector funding. But leading on from that, obviously the BNG sort of credit system was designed really around the planning system and develop again. Then obviously you're using it for a different purpose. But having sort of been involved in that process, like any sort of system, you can game that system. So we were just looking at one of our sites yesterday. We've got a hedge that's got 4 species in it. If we planted an extra species in it, we get about, you know, a massive uplift in biodiversity net gain because it jumps up a category. But we know that in reality, planting an extra species in that hedge would really make very little difference to biodiversity. So I guess my question is around whether in trying to get that uplift on your sites, there's an element of gaming the system, or whether it's a case that actually you're just using your staff's, you know, own expertise around how best to benefit ecology, and what that achieves is then sort of put into the metrics really. In other words, what's driving it? Is it the, you know, your own site knowledge of how to enhance ecology, or is it the sort of the system itself?
So our ecologists are learning about BNG as it's coming out, because obviously the metrics change. So I think we're on the 3rd or 4th iteration of how you actually record the units. So they're constantly updating themselves on the metrics that are being used and how to score, but they are applying their own knowledge and expertise in this. So they know the difference between habitat creation and habitat enhancement. They understand that difference, and we are very much being guided by the experts. We are not giving them the task of just ticking boxes. It is very much about what are the actual benefits, the ecological benefits going to be.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I think that's really revealing, Nick, from my point of view as well. As say, a newcomer here, just learning as we go around BNGs and how we'll apply that going forward. It's certainly something we're thinking about a lot on the Natural Cambridgeshire board in terms of how we work around that particular emerging scene. There's a quick question in the, if I may, before we're moving on, if there are any questions directly for Nick, if someone can pick up a query from the chat there, where Elizabeth's asking where we can find out about the Festival of Stories. So if someone can put a link in there, that would be great to have in the chat, please. In which case, we're moving on. And thank you again, once again, Nick. We're over to Anna McMahon on the libraries engaging with the public on environment issues. If Anna's with us, there she goes. Anna's just popped up, and you are bottom right of the screen, Anna, supporting everyone else.
I can't see myself at all, but hi there. I'm going to just try and share my screen. Can everybody see that?
That's looking good.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm Anna McMahon. I'm a library development officer with Cambridgeshire Libraries. There's a team of us tasked with developing the library service to make it, to encourage as many people as possible to engage with us. And one thing that we're very concerned to do is to work with green partners. Everybody who's spoken so far today has talked about engaging with the public. And so this presentation, I hope, will give you some ideas on how libraries can help you do that. So just to set the scene, we have a strong environmental commitment in the library service. Obviously, as a county council entity, we're committed to the council's net zero goals of the council reaching net zero by 2030 and the county by 2045. Even before those goals were announced, we had signed the Green Libraries Manifesto. This is a national scheme developed by CILIP, which is the Library and Information Association that we're a part of. And basically it's a sort of 7-part commitment to engaging with green issues, putting sustainability at the heart of all our decision making, innovating and evolving what we do already to make it more environmentally friendly, working with our communities on these issues, using our collective voice in libraries, and it's all kind of libraries, not just public libraries, but school, university libraries, using our collective voice for greater impact, working in partnerships, which is kind of what today is all about, growing and sharing our knowledge within our own service, and supporting young people through library services. And we are, as I speak, creating a service-wide green strategy, which I hope will really inform and help us to make more impact in the year ahead, or years ahead. In October, there's National Libraries Week, and this year it was a Green Libraries theme. We did all sorts of activities in our libraries and displays and so forth, including hosting an event which was filmed by a team from the British Library and shared to libraries across the country, involving Jonathan Gregory, who's a climate scientist, and he was talking about a little bit about climate science, and then about how he's upgraded his home to make it more eco-friendly. And we've also most recently, as Richard mentioned, been working with Ely Library. We're piloting that as a kind of green library hub, where we have lots of green activities going on and lots of engagement. And that included a special event for Prickles the Hedgehog. We are obviously sort of the original best from the circular economy. We've always lent books, but we also share digital equipment, and we have, public access computers and so forth. So we're used to sharing things in the library service, and we're also very well placed to inform and inspire. We're an information service, but I hope also an inspiration service, bringing people together from the community to learn and aspire to improve our communities together. We're a truly democratic space. We're open to everybody. We're very welcoming. Gone are the days of those austere libraries where you were shushed by the librarian. It's not like that. We're trusted. Ipsos Mori did a poll in 2021 where librarians came second only to nurses in the most trusted professionals. And we're also very resourceful. We're adaptable, and we, change to new situations, and resourceful in the sense of, we deal with the funding that we have, and we do pretty well, even though we don't have a lot. I do want to point out that we support our communities, whoever you are, but we have a special care for marginalised people. Not everybody knows how much we do in this sphere. You may have heard of the Warm Welcome, which is it's part of Warm Spaces, addressing cost of living crisis and cost of heating and so forth. So anybody's welcome to come and spend the whole time that the library's open, sitting with us. Most of our libraries serve coffee, and we just invite people to make themselves at home in the library. We have this year been announced as Libraries of Sanctuary, which means we have a special care for new arrivals, particularly asylum seekers, refugees, but any immigrants. And we have all sorts of services which are sort of directed for that group of people to make them feel more welcome. We are safe spaces for victims of domestic abuse. You can come to a library and use our computers to access services and not be tracked. We have the carer-friendly tick, which means we're aware of the needs of carers in our communities. We offer free laptops and tablet loans to people who might not have access to those themselves. Free data is something that we've started offering. You can come in and self-declare as needing free data to operate a phone or whatever, and we can give that out to you. We work with Bookstart, which helps young families engage children with reading. We have a care leavers offer. We have an LGBTQ cafe that welcomes people from that community. We have a library at home service where volunteers go out to people in their homes, taking them books and staying for a cup of tea and so forth. And that's just a glimpse of what we do. So we reach members of the community who might not obviously be in the sort of climate active sphere, and yet climate change obviously affects everybody. And so we can maybe reach those communities who perhaps are harder for other groups to reach because we're already engaging with them. Where are we? We're all over the county. We've got 33 kind of static libraries, and 8 of those are hub libraries, which are bigger libraries, more space, more staff. Our smaller libraries are often single staffed and have kind of limited opening hours, but within those hours we're also very active. We have 3 mobile libraries that make stops in about 100 villages, 400 stops over the month. So we have reach out into the more remote communities, and I know that those mobile libraries were a godsend to people as we came out of lockdown, sort of reaching isolated people. We have 12 community managed libraries. They're run by volunteers, but they use our books. So they're like our kind of cousins. And we have Bessie the book bike, who brings library services to you, but mainly in the Cambridge city area, but we can bring our bike to events and you can borrow books from the bike. And it's much better than us sort of driving to those events. It also shows, a nice electric cargo bike to inspire people who might want to take up cycling. And we have a delivery vans, which make it very easy for us to share resources across all our libraries. That's just part of our day-to-day operations. What we do in libraries, obviously we display and loan books. The picture here shows Barbie giving up pinkness and taking up greenness as a response to Barbie mania in the summer. But within our book offer, that also includes a whole e-library, e-books, audiobooks, e-newspapers, etc. So for people who can't travel to a library or don't want to, get in the car and come to a library, you can access a whole load of library resources online, and you can even sign up online. You don't even have to step inside a library to become a library member. We provide lots of information, learning, research resources. That's all sorts of things from, basics of using the internet down to in-depth research, offers like the Ancestry website you can access for free, and local studies. We have computer scanners and printers and free Wi-Fi that you can access in the library for those who are a bit digitally excluded. And possibly of most interest to people on this call today are that we host events and activities. We have regular programs of talks. We hold meetings for book groups and other social groups. We have regular family activities and arts events through our the Library Presents Arts program. And all of those can incorporate greenness. And we invite speakers in, we invite people to deliver programs in the library. And, that might be a really good opportunity for any of you to come and engage the public with the things that you're offering. Our reach is pretty good. We have 90,000 active library users. There's more than twice as many members, but by active library users, we mean someone who's used their library card in the last 12 months. We send out a monthly newsletter and we've got 30,000 subscribers to that. We have a good social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, and that entity formerly known as Twitter. And the Facebook monthly engagement of 30 to 40,000. What exactly that means, who really understands how Facebook works. But anyway, our stuff gets past a lot of eyes. And we also seasonally produce a What's On brochure, which we distribute about 5,000 copies of. So we reach a lot of people. And we have lots of connections. We love partnerships. We love working with other groups. We're in the County Council's Strategies and Partnerships Directorate alongside Communities and Cambridgeshire Skills. And actually our green strategy we're working on with them. And we work with a whole host of organisations. I've got some of the logos up there, but everything from, you know, our colleagues within the county council, all of the district councils, parish councils, national organisations, the British Library. As I said, they came and filmed an event that we did in one of our libraries. We've just started working with Eden Project communities. I've been doing a project with New York Public Library where people, Cambridgeshire Library members and New York Public Library members have exchanged postcards with nature observations on. And that was a really impactful kind of program, which it got into observations of climate change and things, and a really sort of deep connection between people. It was a surprisingly impactful program that we ran there. And we're working with the university museums and with lots of charities. So we have lots of connections, lots of networking opportunities for you if you're thinking, oh, I'd really like to connect with that organisation, or I wonder if there's this organisation that could reach people that I want to reach. Come and talk to the libraries, because chances are we know someone and can put you in touch. If you wanted to work in our libraries, we have great venues. We have rooms and equipment for meetings, so you could do presentations, we can hold events. We have display space, whether that's posters or banners or other things that you want to show. We slightly discourage posters just because we get so many of them, and posters can get lost in the crowd. So if we can think of different ways of working other than posters and leaflets, then we like that. Worth mentioning that many of our libraries, the council-owned ones, have air source heat pumps and other sort of greener developments. And we might be interested in looking at how we could green our outdoor spaces and make them into sort of teaching areas. So lots of possibilities there. So the message I want to leave you with is, if you're thinking about green outreach, think about libraries. We're engaged with the issues, we're embedded in our communities, we love to network, and we're trusted, creative and versatile. We love to discuss ideas. So if you're interested, let's talk. My details are there. I'll also put them in the chat. And that's me.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. It's a really good message. We've just had the first 3 presentations this morning about, to some degree or other, about public engagement, and you've just given us the encouragement to think libraries. If I'm being honest, I wouldn't have thought libraries, but I think many people on the call will have done. But perhaps others will now think libraries as a means by which they can engage with the public and actually bring the work they're doing to greater attention and involve people in that work. Any questions for Anna? But a really useful information piece and reminder, I must say. I think the last time I went to a library, public library, was with my kids, and I need to go again on my own soon, rather than going back to that. Though, as I say, working at university, I spent a lot of time in libraries. It was good to get out of them at one stage. Thanks very much, Anna. Peter, you have a question before we move on. Peter,
should you be giving more publicity to Livy, which I find marvellous?
Anna? I know you're still with us. Don't know, Peter, but I think we're going to get an answer to your question.
Those who don't know, Libby is an online facility which allows access to magazines and books to people who are registered with the library.
Anna, are you with us again?
I'm just here to say I'm back. Sorry about that. In my excitement, I knocked myself out.
So sorry,
I didn't hear the question.
So Peter, you want to repeat the question?
I'm asking whether you should have given more publicity to Libby, which I find marvellous.
Oh yes, thanks. So that is our, essentially our e-library, and we have some other offers. It's an app that you can download, and then you can access for free library books and e-newspapers, e-magazines, etc. But yes, thank you for plugging that, Peter.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks again, Anna. So I think we'll move on. And I can see Adrian's with us. He's the next speaker in front of his amazing garden, which I've complimented previously, even though the picture was taken a couple of months ago. So, Adrian, on to you. And in terms of what should we do to prepare from climate change? And I really enjoyed last month attending the Climate Action Conference, which perhaps you'll mention. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I'll just bring up my presentation.
Looking good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Adrian Cannard. I'm the Strategic Planning Manager at the Cambridge-Peterborough Combined Authority, which hopefully most of you will know brings together all of the councils in our area, along with the elected mayor. And I'm picking up a topic here which probably could be a week-long event in terms of getting into the details. So I'll try and do it justice for you, as I know I've only got a few minutes. I guess the first thing to say is that in terms of preparing the area for climate change, I think we need to accept that we are already in that process of being affected by climate change. And that climate change will continue to happen no matter what we do in terms of mitigation of emissions. So we have changes coming that we need to be prepared for, and that will impact on our natural environment. So I've got a picture there, which is the sort of example of how temperatures have changed over the decades. But it's not just about high temperatures, it's about flooding, but it's also some of those implications that we may not immediately think of in terms of the natural environment. So disruptions to international supply chains or issues around energy could affect the ability of some of our custodians of our natural environment to continue to do their business. There are things beyond the most immediate headline grabbing things perhaps that we're used to in terms of thinking about. And I think it's also worth saying that there are, and I put them in quotes, there are opportunities through climate change, if you want to describe it as that, which would be actually habitat change could happen. Different growing conditions might mean different crops or approaches to agriculture could come forward, which could be seen as potential opportunities depending on how we respond to that. So I've mentioned the ongoing challenge. So mitigation and adaptation. So there is a difference, and I'm going to talk about the right-hand side about adaptation, but just to sort of put that out, mitigation is the work that we all need to do to reduce making the situation worse, which is reducing greenhouse gases emissions, which are warming our planet. And then adaptation is taking changes that we need to do for what's already baked into the climate. And there's obviously an overlap in the middle of things that are beneficial to both. So how we deal with water has an energy implication, which has an emissions implication as much as it does about supplying essential water to our natural environment. So just what are some of the key principles we need to think about in terms of adapting to changing climate? So the government ambition is that as a nation that we are well adapted, that we need to integrate adaptation into all of our decision making. And that's particularly to avoid baking in or locking in things that later on we come to regret. So a good example would be making some decisions on habitat planting in line with the current environmental conditions, and then finding there isn't the water supply or the temperature is wrong in decades to come, and we find that we've essentially will lose that habitat that we've put in now. So there's a long-term view we need to take. We also need to understand the interdependencies. So the impact on one element across another. So if we take flooding, not only does that have the impact of the damage it does at the time, if we're having more flooding, that can also spread seeds. It can move pathogens around, and as we've heard in the news recently, it can also cause our water management system to have undesirable consequences in terms of sewage overflows. So there's a whole range of things that we need to think about that all affect each other as we look at this. Helpfully, there is a UK assessment of different risks, and if you look at the UK climate risk assessment, there are individual briefings on things very relevant to what we'd want to look at. So terrestrial biodiversity, land use, wildfires, and of course we saw terrible scenes of East Anglian fields on fire impacting on through the last heat wave. So there is detailed assessments at the national level. But the big challenge here is the government's independent advisor has basically said we're not doing enough and we're not prepared for this. So they've highlighted, you know, the extreme weather events in the last couple of years as an example of how we do need to respond to that, and that we're not generally prepared for what's going to happen, and that national adaptation planning should be much more ambitious, and there's been a lot of attention on mitigation and not enough on adaptation. So the government produces a national adaptation programme. There are 5 yearly programmes, and the latest one was very recent, so July this year. As you can see there, protecting the natural environment is one of the objectives within that strategy. And anyone who wants to delve into it, you've got 141 pages of government activity to get to grips with. But in terms of some of the highlights for nature, there is the environmental improvement plan, which basically brings together what's being delivered under the government's longer term 25-year environment plan, and that's the Environment Agency in particular taking forward many of those actions. We've already heard from Gabriella on the welcome introduction of the local nature recovery strategies as a national system, and the government is moving forward, perhaps not at the speed that we might like, on the environmental land management funding, which is the support for the farming industry, replacing EU subsidies, which has a very strong public good element as part of that, which would deliver many nature benefits. It also promises a national land use plan to be produced in 2023. I think we're looking a little bit doubtful, given that we're in December, so we still hope to see that in future years, and that's partly a response to bringing together the different pressures that we're now facing on our land, whether that's for energy generation, food supply, or nature benefits, or water management. More work on natural capital assessment, so actually looking at how we value our environment, and a whole raft of strategies, including food and water, which are important. So thinking about how our natural environment needs to adapt, we need to be obviously better informed around the changes. So some of that will come through our local nature recovery work. Some of that will come through the work that we are intending to do to refresh our risk assessment of our climate action plan at the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough level. But as I've sort of highlighted, there's a whole range of other information going on, and that we will need to try and synthesize across our area. The other thing that we need to pick up is the ecosystems approach, so that we don't operate in isolation, and there's been some welcome movement around the introduction of regional water plans, which has sought to broaden the debate around water supply issues to include not just the utility companies that are responsible for that, but a wider range of agencies. And so we need to do that across our ecosystems. I've mentioned the impact on organisations. So business continuity there is not just the public sector, not just private businesses, but our NGOs that manage large areas of important nature, wildlife in our area. How do they become resilient to environmental shocks? So heat waves, water supply, spikes in energy prices, all have an impact on the business models or their ability to be good custodians of our natural environment. And then finally, how resilient is our area in terms of bouncing back? We will have climate extremes. We will see some of those become more of the norm, but the implication of the sort of high temperatures we've had recently becoming the norm means that if we then have an extreme event, it's even worse than what we've had in the past. So what do we understand about bouncing back in terms of our nature? So what can we do locally? One of the things we need to be thinking about is how habitats are resilient, and a key part of the local nature recovery strategy is bigger, better, and better connected habitats, so that we've got some really precious wildlife and habitats across our area, but if they're in small pockets, that makes them more vulnerable to climate impacts. Whereas if we can, through the local nature recovery strategy, increase the area and the connectivity of those, then that helps in resilience. We all need to be prepared. Anyone who lives in a flood risk area will be well aware of the need to think about what happens in the event of a failure of or a breach of the flood resilience measures. But we need to do that for adaptation at our businesses and community levels as well. So one of the things that the councils have been discussing is an adaptation strategy for public services, so that we're prepared in terms of the different climate challenges that may come, and we need to be encouraging others to do their own adaptation strategies to think ahead as to how they're going to cope. We've got loads of work going on across the area and on a lot of different topics, so we need to think about dependencies. We've got major programs of flood resilience investigation by the Environment Agency. We've got the work by the FFCA on the land use plan, which is about bringing things together. We just need to continue, and this forum is obviously a great place to bring that dialogue together around what's emerging around different sectors' responses. Just to pick up on Richard and others in terms of enabling residents and communities to take their own action. So we do need to think about how we encourage and enable that to happen, because this is everyone will need to adapt in some way or another, and we want to do it in a way that people can find out what to do easily, and that we don't bake in difficulties in terms of making some decisions, like if the response to a lack of water is converting all of your garden to hard standing, then that's not going to do much for nature, whereas we can encourage drought resistant planting or things that help. We're already trying to stimulate some what I've called nature positive markets, which sounds really local government of me, but basically through the Fund for Nature, it's about working with our landowners to bring forward ways in which they can do their business to the benefit of nature. So to monetize some of those benefits in an acceptable way that drives a market for nature-based solutions. And finally, making sure that the various climate action plans that we produce, and there is a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough level 1, and individual councils have climate action plans, and a number of businesses have climate action plans, is making sure that we've got nature based solutions and nature and adaptable solutions at the heart of those climate action plans, so that we're not overly focusing on just mitigation, and we look to make robust decisions around that. And I've put up the Doubling Nature Vision document there just to remind ourselves that, you know, we have this great ambition to actually improve our rich wildlife areas and double the amount of nature in our area. And I think we can see that as one of those opportunities of adapting to climate change that we need to build into. And I've just thrown in a few photos at the end, which are slightly blurry now that I've looked at them closely, but we already have examples of adapting or trialing new approaches. So whether that's some of the paludicultural trials, so the wet farming trials, to see how that might improve expansion of the Great Fen, or solutions to deal with challenges around our chalk streams. So hopefully on a positive, there is activity underway, but obviously we need to mobilise as much as possible.
Adrian, thanks very much indeed. It's really great to see the way you've connected the national to the more local and what's going on. And I can also kind of, from a particular point of view, I'm a governor and I've worked with FE colleges a lot, and I'm really very concerned about, you know, climate anxiety that is present a lot of the young people that I work with and see. So it's good also to begin to present some things we can actually do and are doing in terms of action being taken. So thank you for that. Clara had a quick comment about, and good to know about community flood groups being set up. So that's another angle for engagement in terms of adaptation and more generally. And thank you also, Adrian, for mentioning Doubling Nature at the end, obviously the clarion call from Natural Cambridgeshire in particular. Any questions for Adrian this morning? In that case, I think, Adrian, you, as you say, it was an extra presentation, and can I also thank you publicly for the work and advice you've been giving to us at Natural Cambridgeshire, and me personally as taking over as chair. It's been invaluable and I really appreciated it. And if we're all done with questions, then I think I've got another thank you again to say to Peter, supported by Helen, in getting the forum together, and most particularly to wish you all a great Christmas and have a really good time with your families, if you have families, or if you're going away to spend time with others. Thanks very much indeed, and nice to have seen you this morning. Thank you. Oh, sorry, we had to have a question. There's a question come up here. I'm afraid I haven't got a name under your page there. That's 000001. Hello.
Hi, that's me. It's Ursel here from the Environment Agency.
Hello, Ursel.
That wasn't intended to be a hand raise, it's intended to be an applause to thank everybody for arranging today's meeting, which I found really, really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, then we're done. So thanks very much indeed. Go about your day. Thank you.
Helen, I can't see how to save the chat nowadays with Zoom, but presumably you can do it.
You pause the recording first. Helen, you're on mute.
Still COVID, not quite with it. Yeah, the chat will be recorded so that I can send that to you, Peter, to circulate.
How do they want to save it?
You should be able to save it, sort of download it, but it automatically, because it's being recorded, it automatically records the and also the chat. It just sends me the text file automatically. So
good.
I will. Do you want to stop the recording at this point? Because it might.
Oh.